Cool. So three, two, one. All right, everyone. Hey, welcome back again to the Southern Utah Hockey Report. Gabe Goche here with Tommy Rupp. We have another awesome interview ahead of us. George Chalos, going through his resume is quite a lengthy resume, being an ambassador to hockey and just being involved with the sport. He's currently sitting in his Park City office, but he has partnerships, ownerships. We'll get into that, but with the Long Beach Sharks, also the Oklahoma City Warriors, and of course, being in Park City with the Ice Miners. In addition to that, he's also involved with the University of Utah. So, like I said, man, he's just an ambassador to the game. We'll talk about his positions and just pick his brain as we bring more information to you guys as listeners, as viewers to the Southern Utah Hockey Report. So, George, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey Gabe, thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So, let's dive in and talk about first just your background. You're from New York. I know your pastime is being a lawyer, so you're a maritime lawyer. But how'd you get involved in hockey? Tell us how'd you get started?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done it longer than anything else in my life, right? Like I've done it since I was, I don't know, my mom tells stories that there was a park not too far from our house in Queens, and they had a depressed area of the playground that used to flood, and in the wintertime when it would freeze, that's where we'd go skate. I guess it was fine when you're 4 and 5 years old. I don't really remember too much of it, but I have a few scars from it
Oh yeah.
as a reminder. But yeah, it's true. I'm a New York guy. I grew up. I was born in Queens. I lived there till it was just about school age, and then my mom and dad moved out to the suburbs out in Long Island, and that's where I grew up most of my time. My mom moved to upstate New York, just north of Lake George, and I stayed, finished high school in Long Island, and then played some junior hockey. Went to Boston, then carried on to the University of Vermont. And then I tried to play for a year over in Europe and Switzerland, and it was a nice experience, but it was a grind. And when I got back, I had a couple decisions to make. I had a, a second assistant coaching job at Middlebury College that paid $2,500 for the entire season. Yeah, that's right, $2,500 for the whole year. And then I had taken the LSATs that February. And when the results came in, I scored okay on it, and I had a scholarship to go to St. John's School of Law, which is back in Queens, New York. So it was fine. I was really conflicted, but I took the route, went to law school, worked at the rink throughout law school and even beyond that, actually. And For me, it was really frustrating because I'm sitting in class and I'm not having the greatest of times and not really fitting in with a lot of my classmates. And then I watched Middlebury rip off 5 national championships in a row. So as a 20-something-year-old guy, it was really like conflicting for me. I guess at 53, it's still a good decision I made, but that's how it went down. But it was funny because while I was in law school, I was working at the rink and uh, doing lessons in the morning, all the usual stuff that you do when you're trying to make a couple bucks in hockey and go to school full time. And our local youth hockey organization was short a coach. So they said, you want to do a 10U team? So I said, well, I don't really, yeah, sure. I don't really know much about the age group because I was only in my, mid 20s by then. But I did it. And then I got asked to be part of the board. And then I've never not been in hockey every year consistently, right? So for 19 years, I sat on the board and coached at the organization that was known as the Long Island Gulls. They're still quite prominent. Uh, I coached some junior hockey, first in the old Metropolitan Hockey League, and then it was the Atlantic Youth Hockey. It was Atlantic Junior Hockey League, which was the crown jewel to the Atlantic Youth Hockey League, which our youth hockey teams participated in at the time.
Okay.
And yeah, and then after that, I wound up taking over a tier two youth hockey organization on Long Island that was going to be flushed for lots of different reasons, right? Ice time was becoming more and more scarce, and the organization needed to make a decision on whether or not to allocate that time to the tier one program or the tier two program. And we had a change in presidents, and the focus changed from having a really diverse organization that had like almost 600 kids with tier one, tier two, and tier three, plus learn to play. And they were really focusing only on that top tier. And so I left, took the tier twos with me, and moved ranks and built it from 40 kids to 200 kids, and I still operate it today.
That's fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great to hear. And I just enjoyed hearing the growth, right? Because that's the biggest thing is starting from something and then you look back and you're like, holy smokes, like I built that, and then now you still see it going 20 plus years after. So I want to migrate also your career, your venture to Utah. What what brought you out to Utah, and at what stage of your career did you come out here?
Yeah, so I got married to a Texas girl in December of 2010. I moved her to New York, and it wasn't a good spot for her. She hated it. Yeah, I shouldn't say she hated it. It was in Texas, right? And so we had come out to Park City for our honeymoon, and it seemed to be a place that she enjoyed. So we started spending a bit more time in Utah. And at the time, the ambition was, well, maybe it'd be nice to get a house and have a little garden so we can come out and drive out and bring our dogs and make it an extended stay. So we did that, and I bought the log cabin I'm sitting in now, and yeah, I feel like the Unabomber, but here I am. But we did that, and it turns out we're just adjacent to the resort, and we have a little patch of land here, and came out with the dogs, and we did the drive back and forth 1 year. Came out like Christmas time, left in March when the weather broke, and then the next year we did it again, but extended it a little bit longer, Thanksgiving to just past Easter. And then the third year we came out, and she never left. So, that was it.
No, that's awesome. We love hearing stories like that because really hockey, I think it's one of those unique sports where everybody has a story, and I think that's exactly what everyone's tuning into. They want to know a little bit about you and your story, and that's kind of what I'm curious to as well. The thing that I love, especially anytime that I meet a New York born or a New York raised hockey player, is just the culture. Like even people that I work with, if I find someone in New York, the first question that I ever ask them is like, is it Rangers or is it Islanders? You know, and almost every single person will have an answer and why their answer is so passionate. And I love that. So when
Yeah.
you grow up in a place like New York, hockey has a culture that's just embodied in the people. Like not even in the sense of like needing ice to play or anything like that. A lot of the East Coast style teams or people that have been raised in hockey, they'll go out in the street as long as they have a stick and a ball or a stick and a puck or anything like that. When you come from an environment like New York, where hockey's kind of a part of everyone's life, whether they wanted to or not, just people know it a lot more. That culture is a lot more built. What's something that you see coming from New York, moving to a state like Utah that you think would really benefit the state of Utah coming from your experience and all of your bases in New York? What's something that you see that Utah needs?
Oh, well, geez, Tommy, there's a lot, right? And to go back to your question about Rangers or Islanders, let me tell you about
Yeah,
that.
let's hear it.
Yeah, as a Queens guy, that's Ranger country, right? So
Right,
that was, I guess, my first love, so to speak. But when I started school, it was right in the middle of the Islanders' drive for five.
right.
So if you weren't an Islanders fan in school, right, that was a big catastrophe. So once we moved out to Long Island, the local cable system didn't carry Madison Square Garden sports. So by default, you became an Islander fan. And then a little bit later on, I guess it was sort of just about the time I left Long Island uh, in, at the end of high school to go to college, then you could get the sports package that had not just the Islanders but also the Rangers and then the Devils. Yeah, so there was a lot of hockey going on. But the thing that I saw there that was a huge hurdle, and it was a real barrier to entry for a lot of families, was the cost, right? And so a big part of the demographic of youth hockey in Long Island goes something like this. Dad's a cop or a fireman, mom's a nurse, and there's a couple kids all playing, and the family's bought into hockey, so it's a family affair, right? But the cost is outrageous. And then there is quite a few options, uh, like on Long Island particularly. There's like 5 different hockey organizations, and so one of the things that does is it for families that don't think that they're getting what they're paying for, they have options, right? But the other side of that coin is it creates a culture of lily pad hopping. So, oh, I had a bad year. My kid didn't get better. I don't like the coach, etc., so forth. So they jump from one org to the next org, and they do it year after year after year, and that really stunts the players' developments, right? So when I got to Utah, I got out here around 2014, and that's when I started spending a significant amount of time. And by 15, that was pretty much it's my home, right? And my house is in Park City. The rink is like 10 minutes down the block. And one of the things that I was amazed with was once the youth hockey season ended in late February, there was activity at the rink, but it was really sparse, and there was a tremendous amount of ice that was available. And then I inquired, hey, like if I wanted to do like a clinic and have a like cross ice 8U 10U cross ice Tuesday night program here, what would it cost me? And they were like, well, you have a not for profit? Yes, I do. Uh, like 180 bucks. I said 180 bucks an hour. We're paying like 580 bucks an hour in New York, right?
It's outrageous.
So yeah, and so for the first couple of years I was here, I got an hour on Tuesday, an hour on Thursday, did some programming primarily because I was bored, but I enjoyed it, right? And then it went to 2 hours, and I did a little guy group and a big guy group both nights. And then it became incredibly popular. We'd have like 40 kids on the ice in each session, and I didn't advertise it, I didn't do anything, and I sure wasn't doing it for the money. And so what it evolved into was a bunch of the guys in the adult group that I was playing pickup hockey in. They were interested in getting involved, and they were making, I don't know, $100 an hour side money coming out and helping at these clinics. So it became a pretty good thing, right? It became a steady thing. And so for me to answer the question about what I think families here really need to pay attention to is the availability of the ice at unbelievably reasonable pricing. And the other thing I think that goes often unnoticed is the quality of coaching. We have tremendous coaches here. We have a tremendous number of former college and pro hockey players that are here in the community that are happy to give their time. And whether they get paid or they don't get paid, it's really irrelevant. But they're here and they're willing to do it. And I just don't know if they're appreciated. And I'm sure that our families don't show appreciation uh, in the way that they should for it, right? I mean, Gabe's one of them, right? I mean, you're former NCAA, NHL alum, right? You're here in
Right, right.
Utah, and like, how often do you get access to those types of guys? Like in New York, yeah, sure, there's plenty of those guys, but Radek Martinek is doing his clinics and he's charging you 100 and a half to come out for an hour, right? Here, you go down to the rink and you pay your 15 bucks and you're on with the
Well,
tremendous coaches.
yeah, so let's talk about that because I and appreciate you giving me the recognition there. Thank you very much. And that's why I moved here is to bring my expertise, to bring my knowledge to new hockey, but also to already existing hockey people, just to know that it's something that needs more education and it needs more instruction, not only from an on ice perspective, but also the off ice. So let's talk about those guys that are involved up north, the ones that you've been involved, because I know just off the top of my head is Jack Skilly's one of them. Mike Adamek, who runs the Park City Ice Miners. I grew up playing with him and his twin brother. And then you also have Jordan Parisi, who's a goaltender. I played with Jordan as well. So those are just three guys I know that are up north. Like who else do you have in your pipeline?
So, well, there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Jack and I do a tremendous amount of stuff. We're great friends, really great friends, and we talk probably 2 or 3 times a day about everything from the game last night to life. And can you see how much the gas went up at the corner station? I can't believe it. We talk about a lot of things. But obviously, Jackson, NHL alum, right?
Yeah.
He keeps himself in tremendously good shape. And in my humble opinion, there's not a doubt in my mind that he is one of the best skills coaches. And when I say that, it's not just he's a good skills coach. He's a good skills coach that can shift gears and teach the right thing that's age and skill appropriate, right?
Mhm.
So he's got something in his bag for the beginning type players to the most elite players. And I've seen him. We do an academy at the Olympic Oval on the west side of town during the month of June every summer. And we'll go from literally a beginner group at 10 in the morning to having all the pro guys that are in town come out at like 12 noon. And he's got something up his sleeve that's not just appropriate, but appropriately challenging to the different players. Jordan is dynamite with the goaltenders, but he's also quite a coach when you get him out with some of the skaters as well. One of the guys who doesn't get talked about that often, and I think it's a mistake, and he's a hometown guy, Mason Manick. I'm running the Travel A and Travel B program out of the Peaks Arena now in Provo, called the Wasatch Wild. And I called up Mason and I asked him, "Hey, are you available to come and help out?" And like immediately his answer was yeah. Like it wasn't like a hesitation. It wasn't like, well, I got to check. I got to talk to my wife. There was no hesitation. And he comes out and he works with the guys and he's dynamite. Really, really dynamite. Um, Maybe it comes as out of a surprise, but even Ryan Kanasowicz, who's the current head coach of the Grizzlies, he comes out with us during our spring and summer programming as well. And sure, he works all year long. It's what he does for his profession. He works with pro hockey players, but he's spectacular with the kids. And again, like to have that much access to that level of hockey caliber, knowledge, experience, playing experience, coaching experience, it's right here. And it doesn't come at a premium price. It comes at a very fair and reasonable price.
No, that's awesome. That's an awesome story, and it's nice to hear those names too. Like I'm good friends with a lot of those people. Obviously, Adamak. You know, you got like Aaron Dufford who's up there. You've got Thomas Gatta who I used to play with, everything like that. And then you mentioned Mason Manick. You know, I played with his dad and his uncle in the
Yeah,
men's league days, and they're always a hoot. They're always super good to me. And I think the reason that people that are from Utah in some way, shape, or form are so willing to offer up their help is because back in the day, if you grew up in Utah hockey, it was the minute that you're 14, you got to get out of here, right?
yeah,
And I mean, Mason is another example of that. He had to leave early on. You look at Trevor Lewis, who plays for the LA Kings right now. He left for the Pikes Peak Miners when he was 14. You've got Kyle Gover, who left at a very early age as well. And I know he played. He was actually our goalie for our Park City Pioneers senior A team as well. I think the reason that we want to give so much is because leading by example, I think, is the most important thing possible, right? There's
yeah,
so many people, and you've probably run into them, parents especially, where they're like, okay, here's the algorithm of a successful hockey player. If I don't check off these three things, my kid's never going to make it. Like, I mean, and you're talking things that, I mean, I know there's a lot of listeners that are like, well, what could be that crazy about it? There's 11-year-olds with nutritionists. I mean, it goes on and on. And really, I think I've talked with a lot of professional players, or I've been involved with a lot of professional organizations that it's just like, look, if you're good enough, they're going to find you. And now that you have this rare opportunity where hockey is exploding on the scene in the state of Utah, there's a lot of parents that are going to fall into this kind of algorithm talk of, if you don't do this, you'll never be this or anything like that. And that's where my question leads into you is, coming from a state like New York, back in the day, you'd send your kid to New York, Massachusetts, Michigan, et cetera, or whatever. It was always like a power four kind of state that you would send them to. Growing up in the New York environment and seeing all of the high level players that you've seen, what's the one piece of advice that you would have for Utah parents specifically that have their kids involved in these advanced level hockey programs that you think is worth the value of your words? What's that one thing that you're like, if you guys just
Yeah.
do this, everything's going to be okay?
Yeah, look, that's an easy answer, right? Trust the process, but that's such a cliche answer. So, what I would say is, um, it's really dangerous when these parents start listening to each other, because it's just a fountain of misinformation. And what's equally dangerous is the FOMO. Oh, my kid got asked to go play for the Junior Kings. My kid got asked to go play for what you name the organization, right? Or I'm going to go and join this spring program. And yeah, I know it's a 2,000 mile airplane ride every weekend, but that's fine. We're happy to do it. Right? This is silly. This is super goofy, really. uh, my advice to many parents, and I get the opportunity to talk to parents because they ask questions or it just comes up in conversation, that I think what they really need to focus on is, um, first, parent education, so they don't make all these crazy choices where they're not. Everyone's got the different limitations as far as time and money, and some people have a lot of time and no money, and some people have a lot of money but no time, and some people have a lot of time and a lot of money, right?
Right.
So not everybody has the same constraints. And as you guys know, not every player who becomes an elite player has the same path. In fact, I don't know if any player has the same path, right? Everybody's on a different path. So what I always uh, suggest to the families, I never tell anybody what to do, right? I just suggest to them. I suggest in the strongest terms possible that look at how you build a hockey player, right? Really look at it and study how a lot of guys got to that elite level, and whatever that may be. It's not just NHL guys that are elite players. I mean, what's the percentage? Your single digit percentage players that make it to even NCAA D1. Those are elite players as well. So what gets them there, right? And I always suggest that there's 4 5-year plans you should be coming up with. 4 5-year plans, right? And just play through with me for a second. Age 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's your first 5-year plan, right? And you don't need to fly all around the planet. You don't need to be on AAA, quadruple A, super elite teams, right? You need to get to the rink. The kids got to get on the ice, get some decent instruction. And here's the real deal: they got to get off the ice every session with a sweaty head and a big smile, right? Because during the goal of that first 5-year plan is for the player to fall in love with it and the family to buy into it, right? So then you move. Then you move to the second 5-year plan, age 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like, that's super important. And that's like more of the fundamental building blocks to set you up for later success. Age 11 and 12, possibly into 13, USA Hockey calls that your golden age of development, right? That's where kids are going to really be focusing on skills and really starting to master their craft. And PS, they're starting to get a little bit of muscle memory. Now you move into 13s and 14s, body checking starts. And we know the statistics are super clear how many players we're going to lose, right? Every year you lose a big percentage of players. And the super elite kids that were buzzing around at 10s and 12s, now they're neutralized by some of the bigger, stronger, faster kids. And so the game takes a different shape. But then when you move to 15, now it's different. Now you are working on it, but you're not focusing on, can this kid cross over left and over right? Can you go forwards and backwards? Now you're starting to train the kids to learn how to compete, right? That's a really big part of it. And then you move to your third of your 5-year plans, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Are you playing youth hockey? Are you leaving the state? Are you now becoming physically capable and it's the right fit to move to junior hockey. Like there's a lot of choices and it's a lot of confusion because look at the different junior leagues. It's all alphabet soup, right?
Mhm.
Which league are we talking about? The NAHL or the NA3HL? What's the difference? Is it USPHL? Yeah, it is. Is it Elite or Premier? I don't know. Is it NCDC? What the hell is that? Right? Like it's crazy,
Yep.
super crazy. And so, if that's not confusing enough, now we have an EHL and they have an EHLP. What's an EHLP? Oh, that's Premier. Oh, is Premier good? Oh, yeah. Is it really good? Well, I don't know if it's really good, right? Like, it's really confusing stuff. But the point is, that's where you're looking for the guys that's going to compete, right? You're looking. I know parents use the word exposure as if it's like something that they're going to go out and purchase for their kids or provide to their kids. But I think that's a misdirected arrow. At the junior level, these coaches are all under pressure to win. With internet and online broadcasting of almost every league now, like I know for our junior guys, I can't tell you how many games they watch, but they watch hundreds of games and they probably watch thousands of players. Like their job is to find the player that's going to fit on their team and give them a better chance to win. So I don't know about all this traveling around to try to be exposed. And then you get beyond that, right? Now you're talking about your college years, and if you're lucky enough, God willing, then maybe a little pro hockey. And if it's not in the cards to play here, there's plenty of leagues over in Europe still that maybe it's fair to say they're more like high level adult leagues, right? But
Right.
what a dream, right? You live over in Europe and make a couple of bucks and have a time of your life when you still can do it.
Yeah. I had that opportunity for 1 year. Our daughter was actually 18 months at the time, so it was a big culture shock. But do it again for sure. Either wait until your kids are just a little bit older. If you still have kids, or if you have kids while you're playing, and wait till they're older, or do it before you have kids, because it is an unbelievable experience with the history, just and even the atmosphere too. Playing European hockey is a lot different than playing in like the East Coast League or even in the Central League. So it's a big difference there. But George, man, you've so much information, which has been amazing. And I know there's a lot of listeners that are going to take some notes from this. So my question goes back to, as we were talking about checking and how it's changed the game, where they now allow checking at the 14 age level bantams. Before it was at peewees, and then in Canada you're allowed, minor minor contact at like the atom level. So for you, with everything you've been in hockey, what do you feel is the right answer for development? Is it being introduced at a young age? Is it waiting until the maturity? Like what's your take on that?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I'm old enough to have been around when the debate first started and the rule changed, right? So yeah, I'm embarrassed about that. But I'll tell you, I think the move from Pee Wee or 12U up to 14 was good, and the reason that the stated reason for it, and I think there is a lot of data to support it. At 12U, there's a huge amount of disparity between kids and their maturity, right? You'll have a kid that's 50 pounds and 4'6" playing against a 5'9", 140-pound kid, right? And so it was becoming a huge issue, particularly with concussions, right? And so there was a decision taken at USA Hockey, and I think he's now passed. I think Dr. ACHA was one of the pioneers of this. And Dr. ACHA and others said that no, it's better to move uh, the body contact to the kids being a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and a little bit more um, prepared to take contact and give contact. Now, you still have the disparity in size, right, and weight at 14U, and I guess um, the knock on making it so late in the game is that the kids may be ill prepared for it at that point in time. But I think when you do the balancing test for as many bad things that have come out of it, moving it to a little bit later in a player's development, I think there's probably more good things on balance.
Right on.
Yeah, that's a
That's,
great
that's
answer.
awesome. Tommy, before you jump in there, I was able to look up, as you mentioned, Dr. Alan Asher passed away in 2023. So I'll actually, there's a great article on USA Hockey that just talks about the Excellence in Safety Award that was named after Dr. Asher. So I'll share that article for other people to know more about just the pioneering of understanding the head injuries and concussions. So great, thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead, Tommy.
No, absolutely. And actually my question kind of leads into what you were just talking about. When you talk about players watching so much hockey, we all know everything's under a microscope now. Social media is something that is affected our lives in one way or another. And as a hockey player myself, this is something that I struggled with in my own development. I come from I was the last of the old school breed as far as coaches were concerned, where you really had to not make any mistakes if you wanted any playing time out there. And so it always got me curious. You have the players now that are a little bit more sensitive as far as their emotions are concerned, and it's a relationship that has to be massaged by your organization to not only continue to develop that player, but reaffirm their confidence at the same time. Every time that I went out there, instead of focusing on the things that I was good at, I always just wanted to impress whoever it was with my organization, whether that was my coach, whether that was my manager, anything like that, a scout that was potentially in the stands and everything like that. And what I ended up finding out was I gripped the stick way too tight, worrying about everyone else's expectations. So now that everything is so much more under the microscope, and a video goes viral of a kid doing this or a kid doing that or anything like that, how do you, as an organization representative, handle that influence of the online social media, but also reaffirm with your players the confidence in exactly why you brought them into your program to begin with?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and it's not easy to do, right? Because some kids really need a gentle velvet glove approach, and yet there's other kids that still need the iron fist and a stick, right, to motivate them and to keep them, moving forward in their progression. It's really hard to do that, and I think it takes a special coach to know which horse is on which course, right? And it takes someone that's seen it before, and even with the benefit of some experience, there's still a lot of mistakes that happen, right? Because everybody's human, and so you may have a bad day one day, a kid may have a bad day one day, mom or dad may have a bad day one day and receive what the message was wrongly. So it's really hard to do. But one of the things that I like to talk about with our players when it comes up, I think it's cool to watch the social media stuff, right? Like for me, one of the cool highlights was everybody's seen it, right? Zegras does an alley oop with the puck over the net, and Sonny Milano bats it out of the air. Well, Sonny Milano is a '96 from Long Island, and I had him for a couple of years. In our he played at a rival organization, but we'd do summer scrimmages and stuff, and he'd come out there, right? So like when like you get to talk about it with the kids, and it was a big deal at the time. You go, wait a minute, do you know how many times that guy practiced that, right? Like 1,000 times. I mean, I remember if you like do a YouTube search, like Sonny put out all sorts of like crazy videos of doing stick tricks when he was like 12 and 13 and 14 years old, right? And I think he won some kind of a competition. I don't know if it was NHL competition or something else for that type of thing. But like, I like to use it as a motivator to the kids because it's not something that just happens, right? It's something that these kids practiced 1,000 times. And I like to segue that into the discussion about, you know, when you're playing in a tight game and it's 1-1 going into the third period, right? How many times have you scored that winner in your mind in the driveway? How many times have you won the Stanley Cup in Game 7, right? And what I found is there's only a small fraction of kids that actually have that experience until you start talking about it and they feel free to talk about it and they feel free to dream like that, right? And I think that that's a big deal. And I think one of the issues that I'm not in favor of is persistent structure, right? So many coaches are reading books and looking on the internet and finding drills, and this guy's got to go to this spot and that guy's got to go to that spot. And if you don't get to the exact spot at the exact time, you've done something wrong. I don't think that's right. I think the kids have to feel free, they have to be able to be creative, and they have to, in my mind, be able to dream and dream big. Now, what's complicated is a kid dreaming about playing in the NHL and scoring that game winner in overtime in game seven is healthy for the kid. It's not healthy for mom and dad, right? That's when those crazy car rides on the way home from the rink start. And I'm not a proponent of that, but I'm a super big fan and a super big advocate of kids dreaming big and shooting for the moon. And even if they don't quite make it, they're gonna land amongst the stars, right? So that's good.
Yeah, and I was that kid. So I probably won about 1,000 Stanley Cups that I've never won,
Yeah,
you know? And then
yeah,
I had the opportunity to start the game with Gretzky and Robitaille, but that was just all in in the cul-de-sac in Buena Park, California, where I grew up. So,
yeah,
those are the things. And like you mentioned, it was a mindset that, instead of doing homework, I went out, I went out, threw my rollerblades on, and I was Wayne Gretzky's line mate, for
yeah.
make believe. And then I'd make my dad put on some, either old Mileck pads or, have him stuff some pillows down his pants or something like that. So he could be, so he would start off being Kelly Rudy, right? Because I'd have to do warm-ups. So he'd be Kelly Rudy starting off, and then I'd make him the opposing goaltender and I'd just light him up. But but
Yeah,
like you said, George, it's just a mindset that, kids do it, and if you do it often, you start to essentially manifest that dream where nowadays it's technology driven, where not only can it be a disadvantage for most, but it can be a huge advantage for a select few. And it's that select few that has that willpower, that has that mindset to think outside the box, to not be a robot that's not going to just go through the motions, but it is going to do that extra work because their brain is saying, I want to be just like that NHL player. So
yeah,
everything you said is awesome, and it speaks true because, like I said, I'm living proof of that. And the one thing as a former player is there was always more I could have had, right? Like I still feel like I still had more in the tank that I could have put in there, or I could have done this a lot better. But that leads me to you, especially because not only are you coaching, but you're director of operations, you're president, you own franchises as well too. And we talked about the different levels of junior hockey. So